This is a mock interview conducted by ForumIAS Academy at New Delhi. The interview panel includes eminent professors, retired bureaucrats, and other luminaries. The objective of the program is to acquaint the candidate with the format and expectations of the personality test conducted by UPSC.
Good evening, sir. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yes, that's very good. So you are Anand Malhotra, eh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but just introduce yourself, please.
Sure, sir. So I hail from Panchkula, Haryana. I have graduated as a civil engineer from Punjab Engineering College, University of Technology, Chandigarh. Immediately after that, I did my post-graduation in management from Indian Institute of Management, Indore. I have over 6.5 years of work experience, spanning across consulting and e-commerce domains. And I like to expand upon my area of interest, some of which include cooking, reading fiction, and watching talk shows.
So you are passed in 2012, and you have served till 20. You are still serving.
Yes, sir.
You are still serving.
No. So I have resigned from my job and I'm currently preparing.
Okay. So you are from Chandigarh, means you are from Haryana basically?
Yes, sir.
And what is your father at the moment?
So he retired as a chief engineer from Punjab Irrigation Department.
Okay, so he is also civil engineer basically.
Yes, sir.
That's good. So you have kept on the legacy.
In a way, sir, yes.
You have hidden the PA package which you were getting from either from travels or from different sources. Why?
Sir, largely from privacy issues. I had a bad experience early on in sharing my data with certain coaching institutes.
Okay.
Because then I found that it was released online. So
yeah.
Just from a privacy standpoint.
Good. That's fair enough. Yeah. And you graduated in 12 and you have appeared on 2 times for the civil.
Yes, sir.
Why you did not want earlier?
So I gave my first attempt in 2015. I started my job in 2014. That was when I started my first job, and my first attempt was in 2015. However, I had realized that during that attempt that giving an attempt alongside a job alongside a demanding job was quite difficult, and I had realized that I would have to give a full-time preparation in terms of giving a good attempt, and I didn't want to waste attempts by giving any attempt without preparation. So finally, by 2020, I had the confidence to be enterprising enough to take this attempt and take this jump.
But yeah, a lot of water has flown now, and it's too late now. Don't you think like that? You should have taken this chance earlier, because at that time your father was also serving, and you should not have any difficulty. Also,
So my father actually retired before I even graduated. He had retired in 2008 itself.
Okay.
But nevertheless, I feel that it's never too late to be enterprising or to take up any initiative. And I generally believe that this was the right time for me, because I felt that I could prepare and I had that confidence in me.
Don't you think now what I feel, that it is the COVID which led you to prepare for the civil because of uncertainty?
Not really.
COVID time?
So not really. If uncertainty would have propelled me, then taking a step like moving into civil services is even a more uncertain step, because it invites a lot of competition. Yeah. It was more in terms of a race against time, because I knew that I had only 1 or 2 attempts left, and I genuinely was interested or gravitated towards the civil services. So I didn't want to lose on to that opportunity.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And you have good education, you have management also with you, and that will certainly help you to get a better job after this. Then you are civil engineer, and you took sociology. They are the opposite poles. Why?
So when I took the decision to take up this examination, I was only 7 months into that preparation period. And given that I had prior experience with the examination, I knew the demands. I knew that I would not be able to do justice to the syllabus of civil engineering in that time. Secondly, I had read a couple of books earlier on sociology, not sociology specifically, but on related subjects. And amongst other subjects, I did gravitate towards sociology for the topics, as well as for the cross-fertilization it has with other subjects in the general studies.
You are from Haryana. Punjab is
Yes.
little heading toward making their second capital as Mohali. Their Mohali or New Chandigarh in the form of they are making some complexes for their everything in Mohali. But when we say Haryana, it's not making the Panchkula that kind of main capital of them. And both these states, Punjab and Haryana, seems to be losing their developmental fee in the way that they would have made some other capital so that they would have developed. Because Chandigarh, we cannot offer to expand buildings or something like that. There is no scope now. So Chandigarh cannot be thought to be a capital of both the states together on the one hand, and also they should think some other capitals. So don't you think the new states, they are making their own capitals, but these are the much older states, they are not making their own capitals?
So every state has its own journey in terms of its history. History guides the future in many ways. And I think Chandigarh holds a special place in the hearts of both Haryana and Punjab for historical reasons. And to a larger extent, it also shines as an example wherein two states can cooperate with each other in having a common capital. And that is very unique. And as citizens of Chandigarh, we've also experienced that unique culture wherein we can appreciate that. So I think that is a unique flavor that Chandigarh has. In terms of administrative convenience, I do agree, sir, that nowadays, especially in the news, also many a times it is raised that there are limitations to increasing more administrative space in Chandigarh. Consequently, in Panchkula and in Mohali, many secretariats and other institutions have been raised so that they are in a contiguous area as well as there is minimized administrative inconvenience.
But this CTR, Chandigarh Territorial Region, again by making more buildings in both in Panchkula and Mohali, they are very close to each other. And again, congestion will take place in a very short period now. And for the longer period, again, it will not be good. Don't you think that they should make the Chandigarh capital like Jalandhar and Rohtak or something like that? That could have been a better decision for both the states.
So I'd like to take a moment with your permission to think on this.
Please carry on. Yeah.
So again, from an administrative viewpoint, that could be a point in case, but other cities also have their own constraints in terms of infrastructure. I would rather posit that Chandigarh is in and the Tri-City area is in a much better position in terms of pre-planning that has been done. Secondly, there is also an element of symbolism because when Punjab was created, Chandigarh was created to wipe away the pains of the partition that had been done. It was created on a very modern ethos. So that symbolism and that attachment is also rooted. So both symbolism as well as pre-planned architecture of Le Corbusier, which still serves the city to a greater extent till date, I think puts Chandigarh in a better position compared to maybe perhaps Gurugram or an industrialized place like Jalandhar.
Yeah. Okay. Good. In fact, Himachal has also got some 7% share in Chandigarh that is not being given to them. And in the later stages, this can become a little controversy. So but if we bifurcate the high courts for at separate distinct positions, I think then it can be thought of unless we cannot. Okay. Now coming to what is our Fazlika issue of Haryana, Punjab?
So I'm sorry, I couldn't catch that. Could you please repeat that?
And Fazlika issue for Haryana and Punjab.
Okay. So, sir, in 1966, when the partition of Punjab was happening and Haryana was being carved out, so the decision came through Hukum Singh Rana Committee and the actual division happened through Shah Commission. So one of the recommendations of Shah Commission was that the Kharar area, especially Chandigarh, be given to Haryana and Abor and Fazilka areas also be given to Haryana. So these were the recommendations, but this did not materialize. And Chandigarh continued to be a joint capital, while Abor and Fazilka parts, they were the Hindi-speaking regions of Punjab. They remained in Punjab.
So it was basically Punjabi and Hindi. That was part of it, but more Fazlika, they were Hindi speaking and they were kept in Punjab. That is the issue. Now, Honorable Prime Minister is on visit to Northern Europe. And we have visit to nomadic countries or something like that, Nordic countries. There is two terms. One is Scandinavian countries and other is Nordic countries. What is the difference between these two?
Sir, I may stand corrected, but I think Scandinavian countries encompasses a larger construct. Most commonly, it entails Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. and sometimes also people include Iceland and parts of Greenland into it. However, I think when we talk about Nordic countries, and again, I may stand corrected on with regards to Nordic countries, but I believe it is Norway, Sweden, and Finland, which are generally regarded as Nordic countries.
It is other way. It is other way. Greenland, and Iceland. Now they have been included in Nordic countries. Otherwise, Scandinavian countries and these are Northern Europe countries basically.
Okay. Thank you for correcting me, sir.
Why they are important to India? They are very small countries. Why they are important? Why we are giving more importance to these countries?
So, at top of my head, I can think of 2 or 3 important reasons. One, of course, is in terms of the green strategic agreement that we are seeking with Denmark, and also in terms of green energy. So, these countries were at the forefront, especially with the advent of Gulf War in 1990. These were at the forefront of transitioning earlier towards renewable energy. And now, as India is also transitioning towards renewable energy, that technology transfer is an important dimension. Secondly, sir, from a geostrategic point, it gives us access to the Arctic region, which in the coming time is going to be a very crucial geopolitical entity, especially with climate change and with new routes that may open up, and possibility of oil reserves in that region. So from these aspects, I think these are very important issues.
In fact, India wanted to. India was already entering into American region. India wanted to enter in the Europe region also, and being these North European countries, they are very clean. They are very democratically. They are very quality. Quality is very high. Their honesty is very good, and corruption is least. So and they are very good in green energy basically. So and they have kept their environment very clean. So, and they are technically very advanced. And we have a market for them on the one hand, and we have a technical trained persons. So these were the issues. Sir, over to Gautam ji.
Thank you.
So Anand, I see that your optional is sociology.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Anand, in Haryana, we have come across some, actions of the state government based on court orders, where houses of people were demolished in Faridabad and some other regions in the Aravallis.
Sir, the demolitions in Aravallis were done on the grounds of illegal encroachment that had been there on the areas and the ecological sensitivity of the Aravallis.
Mm-hmm.
So these were the two grounds on which these were affected. So from a sociological standpoint, there are 2 or 3 dimensions. One dimension is in terms of urbanism, our articulation of urbanism and how inclusive that articulation of urbanism truly is, especially in the light of migration from the rural areas on lack of non-farm jobs in the rural areas. Secondly, there is a very, in terms of the inequality that exists, because after 1990s, the dominant thought in governance and in social narrative has been the value of the middle class values. But when we look towards these illegal encroachments in the most urbanized parts, there is almost, as Rajni Kothari puts it, a selective amnesia of poverty, wherein we choose to neglect or we choose to selectively ignore the living conditions of people who are living in these societies. Again from sociological points, there are very, very interesting studies that are done within these societies in terms of how even after coming into the urban areas, they tend to retain their rural identities on lines of caste, on lines of regions. So if I have to summarize, the implications from sociological point would be A, in terms of their rehabilitation, B, in terms of inclusiveness into articulation of urbanism as a middle class construct, and C, in terms of their ethnographic studies in terms of how they retain their rural identities.
Okay. So, Anand, you have done your MBA, right, from IIM Indore. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, in government right now, we see that there is a lot of tendency to, hire consultants or go in for consultancy projects, and we see that such consultants are quite highly paid. Right, I can tell you that the average salary of a consultant is almost 3 times the salary of a civil servant right now. even though consultant is for a fixed term or for a contractual period, whatever. So, do you think that you being a management graduate from a very good institution, you can do very well outside the government rather than trying to get into the government?
So it's both ways. I mean, I'm not denying that opportunity to work with the government and in governance arenas are also there in the private sector, like you rightly mentioned, in terms of consultancies which work for the government. However, my motivation primarily was in terms of to be closer to the execution side. I was initially into consulting sphere, and then I had graduated towards startups largely because I wanted to be closer to implementation, and I felt that my skill set was more oriented towards implementation. I really thrived in projects wherein I directly got to be part of that implementation and wherein I could directly be closer to bringing that change in the bottom line. So that is why my gravitation is more towards being a part of that implementation program rather than only as a consultant.
Okay, fine. So one of your hobbies, Anand, is cooking.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, and you have studied sociology. So, can you tell me that why, when it comes to the cooking as a profession, particularly the professional chefs, we see that almost 95% of them are men. We don't really see women as chefs, even though the balance is totally opposite in case of households. So, why is that anomaly existent?
Sir, actually, this is not an anomaly. If we look into the deep-rooted patriarchism or patriarchy that manifests in the society, this is explained in that patriarchy because what patriarchy entails is a compulsory domestication of women. And wherever there are opportunities to drive out economic gains, in those opportunities, even though at one end we try to posit that okay, cooking is a sphere for women. Allegedly, we try to posit that cooking is reserved for women, or women are supposed to take care of the domestication activity. However, when it comes to driving the economic benefits out of it, then men take that charge. So it is because of that patriarchal mindset that this does exist, but it is changing fast. Generally, they say that in restaurants it's very demanding and it takes a lot of physical labor, but also, sir, this is again an excuse to deny women the right to be in jobs or take demanding jobs wherein they can be away from their houses for 12 hours at a stretch, which generally happens with the cooking industry.
Okay, fine. So, you also read fiction.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is the last thing that you have read in fiction?
So just recently I read and Then There Were None by Agatha Christie,
Okay,
and I also read The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman.
okay. And what is the last talk show that you have seen?
Well, sometime back I just saw the Stephen Colbert show
Mm-hmm.
late night,
Oh,
and generally I watched it on a daily basis.
okay. So, Anand, we see that there are some shows such as the Mehdi Hassan show, and there are some shows on BBC which actually, try to present India in a very negative light. Okay, and most of whenever they do a show on India, it is mostly devoid of facts. It is mostly a assertion of their perception about India. So, in your opinion, how can we actually counter such unfounded allegations on such global shows?
Sir, in one sense, because of democratization of internet, there are already countermeasures. For instance, many of the shows, if you will see them on YouTube, if the comments are enabled, people will call out the people on their double standards and in terms of fake news if they are propagating. So there is that. Plus, we have social networks like Twitter. We have other forums wherein if very misogynist views are also presented at times, people do get called out.
Hmm.
Currently, there is a term called cancel culture. While I don't promote it, but I do see that it has got much amplified, especially in such rhetorics which are misplaced or which are not fact based. Apart from that,
Okay.
sir, apart from that, government can also take certain steps in terms of making sure that bipartisan information flow is there, and in making sure that there is objectivity in reporting, at least from the state media.
Okay, fine. So, Anand, you have studied in Chandigarh for 4 years.
Actually,
Hello,
my entire schooling till graduation was from Chandigarh.
Chandigarh. Okay,
Yes,
good.
sir.
So, in Chandigarh, we hear of a term called Gedi route. Have you come
Yes, sir.
across it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it is normally, criticized that all this gedi culture, it is actually, very detrimental for the, daily normal movement of women. So how do you see this, and what is the reason behind, such unhealthy practices continuing in the city of Chandigarh?
So typically, Gedi in Punjabi typically means taking a leisurely stroll. That is
Hmm.
a very broad-based meaning. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, this route was made. People usually drive their bikes, and it's mostly the youngsters from Punjab University and other campuses in that area.
Mm-hmm.
When it was instituted, it was a rather innocuous thing, wherein it meant that youth are enjoying their freedom. There is a healthy movement, and there is general bonhomie. However, over time, there are also connotations of it becoming a place where eve teasing happens, and generally where a lot of women get catcalled, or there are a lot of these things that are happening, which are not desirable. So again, art imitates culture. I think with time things are changing. Like in 90s, our movies used to allow a lot of eve teasing songs, and we used to feel that they are rather innocuous. I think in the more
Your voice is breaking,
open
Anand.
culture that we are today, and in more responsive culture that we live today, things are changing and people are also becoming more responsive. There is also better law enforcement to make sure that these untoward things don't happen.
Okay, okay, good. Thank you, Anand.
I see that you have done your
Hello,
MBA
sir. I'm
from the
good.
Institute of Management, right? What was your specialization?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. I had focused more towards sales and I had focused more on sales and marketing subjects. And alongside that, I also studied a bit of operations and IT. Sir, like I said, I had majored in sales and marketing subjects, and also took up some subjects in operations and information technology.
So in your first year, you must have done some basic finance, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is net present value?
So it is the net value of discounted cash flows over time.
So if I am discounting the cash flow at what rate should I be discounting it at?
Sir, your expected rate of return, for one example, it could be either the risk-free rate plus a risk premium that you would put on it.
Okay. So expected rate of return. So if my expected rate of return on a project is 25% and on another it is 12%. So are they both comparable?
Sir, so it would not really, because it would depend on the quantum of investments, the break-even times, as well as it would also depend on the IRR. That is the internal
It
rate
won't
of
depend on
return.
it won't depend on the level of risk.
So that too, that is true.
So so what is the risk premium that, since you use the word risk premium, what is the risk premium that should be added to arrive at the correct discounting factor?
So there are multiple ways in which that can be done. Unfortunately, I'm not too sure about the exact definitions that people use.
Okay,
It's been a
okay,
while.
fine.
I'm not too sure
No,
on that.
it's okay. So you were in CAST 24, right?
Yes, sir.
What were you doing in CAST 24?
So I was a senior general manager in the special projects team. My mandate was to build their B2B business unit from ground up. So Cars 24 traditionally deals in buying and selling cars from customers. I was helping them set up their business unit, wherein there would be sale and purchase of used cars from dealers to dealers, as in a B2B network.
Great. So was CAST 24 profitable when you were there?
So in terms of profitability, overall, no, and till date they're not profitable, but they were recovering. In terms of unit economics, they were profitable.
So at a company level, they were not profitable, right?
No, sir.
Okay. So now you see this trend that there are companies which are making loss after loss, are bleeding cash, but they have valuation in $1 billion. They are unicorns or decacorns. So how do you arrive at that valuation? I mean, since you have worked in a startup, must have been a sort of a startup when you were there. So
Yeah.
what's the reason for these kinds of valuations being arrived at?
So these valuations are a function of the future potential and not the current cash flows that are happening. In the sense that, for instance, if I may use an example of Amazon, Amazon bled for 20 years. However, in the next 5 years, it more than reaped those benefits, and it more than returned that capital to the investors. So the investors are playing on how big the potential can be in the future and how disruptive these technologies can be, given the scope of penetration that is huge in the market.
Great. So I'll change track. I'll ask. Since you are from Haryana, so there is a dera culture in Punjab and Haryana. There are a lot of adherence to these deras. So, I mean, what do you think is the reason for these deras coming up on such a large basis and only in these two states?
So one reason, basis my limited study of sociology, that I can think of is that there is a paradox of modernity and a bit of religious revivalism that happens. So Punjab and Haryana were the states where Green Revolution happened much earlier in the 60s. These were the pioneers in Green Revolution, which brought in much of wealth. But with a lot of modernity that came, there is also a religious revivalism that happens as a protest ideology to that modernity. So basically, with more progressive rationalization of the mindset, there is also an equally stronger reaction towards it in terms of religious articulation as well as in terms of coexistence of traditionalism.
Do you not think that maybe this is because many of the social groups have been barred from the temples and the gurudwaras, and maybe this is a reaction against that, the dera culture, because it's more supposedly more equitable?
So that is also a very valid point that you have pointed out. And some of the deras do explicitly articulate their followers to be from the vulnerable sections who have been excluded historically. That is very true, sir.
So in one of the questions that Gautam sir asked you, it was regarding why more chefs are men and less chefs are the number of chefs, women having the percentage of being less. So you said that maybe 12-hour work shifts and can be detrimental to them. But if you see that in the field of nursing, there's an overwhelming majority of nurses who are there. While this is also a profession that demands long night shifts. So does the patriarchy not come in there? The patriarchal nature of society.
Sir, I'll just take a moment to consider on this.
Yes, sure.
So here again, I think patriarchy does come into play. Again, that same notion that is there in cooking, that okay, caregiving is also a female-centric role that does play an input. However, unlike restaurants, in restaurants the ability to draw economic benefits is much huge, and some of the chefs are able they are millionaires or even billionaires. However, in terms of nursing overall, the economic benefits are not that high compared to doctors or other medical professionals. Secondly,
what is the percentage of chefs who are millionaires out of the total number of chefs who are there? Do you have any data point regarding that?
Sir, I would argue that if there is any restaurant in India, a large chef-owned restaurant or a fine dining restaurant, invariably that chef will be a millionaire if you measure it in INR.
Okay, so let's shift this from the Indian geography to a global geography. Even globally, the majority of nursing in the nursing staff you'll see are women, yes, and they are less paid, less supposedly. Then why is it that supposedly less patriarchal countries are also facing the same issue? Or do you think that this is that there is a matter of choice also involved here? Maybe there are certain professions towards which women gravitate naturally, just like maybe in bricklaying, men gravitate towards bricklaying and lumbering, and women gravitate towards nursing. Do you think that is also a possibility?
Sir, I think that conditioning is there due to patriarchy only, that maybe jobs like teaching or jobs like some of the jobs like bricklaying or physical activity are reserved for men or others are for women. I think it's a function of conditioning only. From my viewpoint, I don't think that there should be a barrier or there should be an eyebrow on who should do what. But society has a lot of role in conditioning or bringing in norms as to what is desirable and what is not desirable.
So can society decide your physical attributes? I mean, are men supposedly on average bigger and stronger than women, or is that also due to conditioning?
So while in terms of muscle mass, there have been studies, especially by Parsons and Good and others who have done studies on muscle mass and found that yes, men do have a higher muscle mass ratio. However, there is also an element of patriarchy wherein women are denied that nutritional or same level of nutrition as men due to those patriarchal moorings.
But this is for India. Supposedly in the West also, more men go towards becoming lumberjacks and bricklayers. Is the same denial of nutrition also practiced in the West? Are there any studies regarding that?
Sir, not that I can recall of. But again, patriarchy is prevalent across most societies, be it in India or across. For instance, Israel has an army wherein women can be an active part of those armies as well. So I don't think that we can say that any job is suitable only for men.
Thank you very much, Anand. I think I'm done. Raveesh, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Anand, I can see you were born on 6th of August, right?
Yes, sir.
Your date of birth is 6th of August. Can you tell me the historical significance of that date? Any big event happened on that day?
So 6th of August is also known as Hiroshima Day. It was the day when US had dropped the atom bombs on Hiroshima in Japan.
So nuclear weapons, are they weapons of mass destruction?
Sir, I must admit that I am not clear on the official definition of weapons of mass destruction. But from what I can construe from how it is phrased, I would believe that yes, they cause widespread destruction.
They are weapons of mass destruction.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Is there any other class of weapons that are classified as WMD?
So given that if nuclear weapons are classified as WMD, then thermonuclear weapons or hydrogen bombs should also be classified in the same way. And I would think, although I'm not sure, but I would think that chemical weapons like mustard or sarin gas can also rack that same amount of mass destruction.
Very right. And biological weapons?
So possibly, although I'm not aware much about biological weapons, but yes.
Okay. Are you aware of any conventions that limit their use?
So regarding nuclear weapons?
For weapons of mass destruction. Are there any conventions? There may be, I'm not asking a single convention, there may be separate conventions for each of the class that we just discussed.
So what I can think of are some of the treaties or conventions that come to my mind are in terms of a comprehensive test ban treaty, nuclear non-proliferation treaty, missile technology control regime. These are some of the things that are coming to my mind right now.
Okay. And then are you aware of any domestic legislation that India has on weapons of mass destruction? Any act of the parliament? Or
I'm afraid I'm not able to recall any right now, but I'll make sure to read them.
What is India's stand? What is India's stand regarding nuclear weapons? And why hasn't India signed CTBT or NPT?
So, could I get the second part again? Could you kindly repeat that second part again?
Yes. What is India's stand regarding nuclear weapons? And why hasn't India signed the NPT and CTBT? Non-proliferation treaty and comprehensive test ban. Why haven't India signed the treaty?
So, from what I understand, our articulation has been, in terms of nuclear weapons, has been twofold. One is in terms of common minimum deterrence and no first use policy, wherein we have said that we will not be the aggressor in using a nuclear weapon on another nuclear power. And the second has been in terms of for non-nuclear states, we will not use any nuclear weapon against non-nuclear states. So that is the broader stand that India has taken. And in terms of non-proliferation treaty and comprehensive test ban treaty, India's reservations are driven by our national interest and also by the fact that we are not recognized as a nuclear power, especially by the non-proliferation treaty. So if we want to be a part of that treaty, we wish to be recognized as a nuclear power wielding nation.
So India's objection is only to non-recognition as a nuclear weapon state. Are there any other clauses or maybe underlying fundamental basis or philosophy of the NPT that India objects against?
Sir, I think the broader crux of the clauses also entailed restrictions on our sovereignty to conduct those tests. So again, in terms of the actual crux or actual provisions that are there, I will have to read more on them. But the broader crux is in terms of having our sense of sovereignty over these tests.
Okay, all right. So you have worked with Cast 24.
Yes.
Is it a unicorn?
Yes, sir. It became a unicorn in 2021.
Okay, how many unicorns are there in India?
Sir, I think last I checked, there were 46 unicorns, 42 unicorns, and 4 decacorns.
I think we have crossed 100. It was very recently in news where I think Mr. Piyush has announced that we have reached that, we have crossed that barrier. Anyway,
I may have to
do you
recheck
know
that,
the
sir. I must have
sectoral?
corrected it.
Okay, sure, no issue. Do you know? Do you have any idea regarding the sectoral breakup of the unicorns? In which sectors the unicorns are dominating? For example,
In terms of actual percentages, I don't
have.
have the exact percentages with me, but there is an overwhelming dominance, especially in the sectors of fintech, retail, and edtech, and more recently, edtech.
Don't you think that like unicorns are not in the sectors that require most innovation? Like we generally see that there are many economic analysts who say that unicorns will be solving problems that are facing India, and the sectors that require most innovation, say for example agriculture marketing, or say for example climate change, or the new technologies that are required to tackle climate change. Unicorns or startups are missing in that domain. Why do you think that is the reason? Or why do you think that unicorns are they are blooming only in certain sectors only? Like e-commerce is one of them. Everyone is promising 10-minute delivery, 5-minute delivery, things are coming up. But in sectors that really require a lot of innovation, unicorns are simply missing, or startups.
Sure.
Do you agree with this assessment first?
So in terms of, I'll have to make a empirical investigation into it to give a strong answer, because I myself know a lot of startups that are there within agriculture as well as energy, like Atomberg initiatives that are there. However, I get a point, sir, and I do agree to an extent. In some of the sectors, there has been a disproportionate investment, while others have remained ignored. For instance, in the two sectors that you have mentioned, for agriculture, the top reason that comes to my mind is a lot of regulation that exists in the market, as well as a certain opposition to reform or private investment, especially at the cost of or at the fear of losing land. That could be there. And in terms of climate change or energy side startups, sir, I can think that it's more demand driven, wherein we still are in the very nascent stage in terms of the demand that these startups can cater to, and that ecosystem or technology transfer does not exist yet. However, in retail and fintech, from a demand perspective, the market is very
issue for? Okay. Do you think funding is an issue, especially related to agriculture sector startups?
So possibly because it will follow.
Focused on.
Sorry, sir.
Yes, please go on.
So possibly because because that funding would also follow that market demand. Whenever someone is funding, they are looking at the what is the market potential, in how many years can they recover the investment that they have done. So because of certain governmental regulatory challenges or demand side limitations, funding also follows that curve.
So you have won second prize in Press Se Mulaqat. What was this thing? Press Se Mulaqat?
So this was essentially an extempore competition wherein we were shown certain clippings, and we had to come with on-spot reporting of them. So they were either pictorial or videographical clipping, and we had to cover them as reporters.
Okay. Very recently, World Press Freedom Index was released. Do you know what is India's rank on Press Freedom Index?
Sir, I'm not sure about this. I'll have to read up.
Okay. And the report mentioned that India has slid down compared to previous earlier ranking. Can you tell me what do you think can be the reasons why India has a slide down on the ranking? Is there any? Do you think that there are too much restrictions on press in India?
So I'll take this in two parts rather. Firstly, in terms of reasons that I think plausible reasons that are possible. One could be in terms of the method in which this computation was done and the credentials or the manner in which this rating was done, because the manner can make a major difference in terms of how objective that assessment is. Secondly, it could be in terms of public opinion, or it could be whether there's a public survey or there is not a public survey. there could be a ulterior motive as well.
Okay.
And
Okay.
apart from that,
Let me
it could be
interject here. I'm not asking you why India slid on the ranking. I'm not, because since you are not aware of the report, so I'm not asking you what are the possible reasons. I'm asking you your personal assessment. Do you think that there are too many restrictions on press in India?
So not necessarily, because I think that while we enjoy the freedom to speech and expression, it is not an absolute right. And largely for reasons like public morality, law and order, and other reasons which are important, they are reasonable restrictions. Within that ambit, unlike other governments, we see that we are not a dictatorship. The current government, any press is open. The current government is open to criticism by any quarters. We do not impose, or we do not prosecute our journalists. So, in a larger sense, I would say that there are reasonable restrictions do exist to maintain law and order within the society. However, to a very large extent, as a democratic country, we have a very free press system.
Okay, which ministry in India is, they have the responsibility of regulating the media and the press? Which ministry would issue the guidelines regarding this?
So the two that come to my mind are METI, that is regarding online digital platforms, and Ministry of Broadcasting for television and cable.
Okay. Okay, my last question. You have graduated from Punjab Engineering College, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? So what is different between, it was earlier known as Punjab Engineering College only. Now it has become a University of Technology, right?
So currently it has gone back to deemed university. At the time I graduated, the name was Punjab Engineering College, University of Technology.
Now it is gone back to University. Now it has gone back to only Punjab Engineering College.
Yes, sir.
So what was the difference between two, and why have they got it? And why have they got it? Can you deemed to be university again?
So I got the first two questions, that what is the difference and why the reversal happened. I couldn't get the last question.
Yes. What was the difference in? Yes. What is the difference? Like you said, they have changed back from Punjab Engineering College, University of Technology to Punjab Engineering College again, deemed to be university. Why have they reverted?
So this happened because of Supreme Court directive that came. Earlier, UGC had allowed certain colleges to who were deemed universities to use the title of university, which in 2011 the institution did. However, this matter then went to Supreme Court, wherein a direction by Supreme Court came that universities cannot on their own declare themselves to be universities, and they would have, these universities which were deemed earlier will have to move back to deemed university status.
And what is the difference between these two status?
So it would be in terms of the autonomy they have in terms of using the finances or grants that are allocated to them. A university may have more autonomy in terms of syllabus, pedagogy, as well as in terms of recruitment, as well as financial functions.